Reign of Fire is a post-apocalyptic dragon film from 2002. It was written back in 1996 by Kevin Paterka and Greg Chabot. They sold their script to Spyglass Media, who had Matt Greenberg come on and do some rewrites. It had a budget of $60 million, but only managed to bring in $82.2 at the box office, making it a commercial and critical failure. Critics weren't fond of it, calling it derivative, with some nice special effects though. Around this time, you already had 3 Jurassic Park films, with each one making less and less at the box office, so it seemed public interest in movies like these were starting to wane. Dragons in particular were never really big box office draws. Back in 1996, you had arguably one of the better dragon films, Dragonheart, but even that failed to light the box office on fire. With a modest budget of only $60 million though, especially when compared to the $140 million spent on Men in Black 2, which opened the week prior, they were willing to take a chance. Director Rob Bowman, most known for directing and producing many episodes of The X-Files, was brought on to direct. After Rob left The X-Files in 2000, he really didn't know what he was going to be doing next. That was until his agent called telling him about the script for Reign of Fire. The idea intrigued Rob, but he was unsure if he would be up to task. During his time on The X-Files, he always thought his weakest episodes were the monster of the week stories. He felt he thrived when he had the safety net of the ongoing storyline, but lacked the confidence when it came to the standalone episodes. However, he liked the idea so much that he just had to sign on. The mix of the modern and the medieval, castles and dragons, combined with tanks and modern weaponry, are big reasons why he wanted to do it. Rob wasn't coming into this to make an action film with dragons, he wanted to make a horror film. A roller coaster where anytime the dragon appeared on screen, people would jump and laugh and just have a good time. Inspired by classic films like Jaws, he wanted most of the tension to come from what you don't see, from the expectation of when and where the dragons will attack. However, once you did see the dragons, if they didn't appear as terrifying as Rob wanted, then it would be all for nothing. The dragons went through a few initial designs. At one point, they were even going to walk on 4 legs. An early design by H.R. Giger, the man responsible for creating the xenomorph from Alien, showed the dragons as these almost serpent-like creatures with multiple tails and his signature biomechanical look. Giger pulled out of the project shortly after submitting this design, but it does bear a resemblance to another one of his paintings titled Alien Monster 4 from 1978. The special effects team were given 9 months of prep in order to get the right design and, well, create the dragons. Dan DeLue and Hank Driscoll from Secret Labs came on early in the project and started with the designs. They wanted the dragons to move like a leopard, make sounds like a cobra, have the skin of an alligator, and the spine of a snake. They took the features they liked the most from each animal and incorporated them into the design. They also watched a lot of footage on various animals so they could figure out how exactly their dragons would move, with flight being based mostly on bats. The dragons in the film weren't always computer generated, and Artem was hired on to create a few practical effects. They were asked to create the head, body, and one wing, with the wing being over 120 feet long. The dragon needed to be sturdy, as it had to be transported from London through the harsh winds of Dublin where they were filming. The next thing they needed to figure out was how the dragons would breathe fire. While Rob Bowman watched some National Geographic, he saw the spitting cobra and noticed how it would spray venom from its fangs. This is when it dawned on him. The dragons could have 2 separate glands inside its mouth, each one with a different chemical, and when the chemicals combined, they would create a flame. While the dragons were CGI, the fire for the most part was not. To mimic a dragon breathing fire, they used an excavator that they rigged up with a 10,000-gallon propane tank and a couple 3-inch pipes that would spit out the flame like a giant flamethrower. The special effects team would then go back in post and digitally remove the excavator while also lining everything up so it looked like the dragon itself was breathing the fire. Now that they had all that set, it was time for the cast. The film was filled with mostly relative unknowns, except for Matthew McConaughey. He was signed on as Denton Van Zandt. Even though Matthew is top billed, he doesn't even appear in the film until roughly the 30-minute mark. Matthew's previous film Frailty was rather dark, so he wanted to get away and do something a little wild and fun, something where he could play a badass. He would shave his head for the role, which he revealed in his 2020 book Green Lights was mostly because he was starting to lose his hair. Matthew would also get in shape for the role, mostly by doing day-to-day activities and the occasional round of push-ups and boxing. The second build was the relatively unknown Christian Bale as Quinn. Even though he had appeared in films like American Psycho, which had a cult following, he wasn't quite Batman just yet. When Christian was first offered the role, he was a bit hesitant. He needed just a little reassurance. He liked the idea, but he had no idea how the dragons would look, and most dragon films prior to this one were usually comical or very light in tone. However, after speaking with the director, he realized that they both had the same concerns and ideas about where the film should go, and this helped convince him to sign on. Reign of Fire takes place in a post-apocalyptic future where dragons have wiped out most of humanity. The film begins with young Quinn as he enters the London Underground, where his mother is leader of a construction project. A problem occurs when one of the drillers hits some kind of void or empty chamber. A very irresponsible crewman hands Quinn a flashlight and tells him to go check it out. What Quinn finds is a hibernating dragon. He wakes the beast, which spits some kind of chemical in his eyes, causing partial blindness. He runs to his mother, telling her he saw something, when she quickly rushes him to the eye wash station. The other men check out on what the boy saw, but are burnt to death in the process. Quinn and his mother attempt to escape up the lift, however the dragon catches up to them and ends up killing his mother. The dragons begin to spread across the world, turning everything to ash. Unable to figure out how they spread so quick, scientists discovered the dragons were responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. The dragons come out of hibernation every few millennia, devouring and burning everything, putting the planet into an ice age as the ash fills the sky. And then, as they begin to starve, they go back into hibernation where they await for the planet to restore itself and then do it again. With the planet's resources waning and the dragons starving, they've started to become even more dangerous. 12 years have passed since the first dragon made its presence known, and now in 2020, Quinn leads a group of survivors as they live out the last of their days inside of a castle. One of the last refuges, as modern-day architecture was no match for the ferocity of the dragons. They're not completely in the dark though. They've still managed to keep some things like electricity, basic plumbing, and even have a few working vehicles. Quinn gets called to the top as a few of the survivors are going to go out to the fields and grab food. However, their food supply isn't ready, and if they take it now, they won't have any seeds to plant for next year, which will cause them all to starve. Eddie is going out harvesting regardless if Quinn likes it or not, because his children are starving. Although none of these people look like they're starving, they all seem to be rather healthy actually. Quinn takes the keys from the vehicle and is backed up by his best friend Creedy, played by a very young Gerard Butler. After performing a reenactment of The Empire Strikes Back for the kids, they all say a prayer, including a young Joffrey from Game of Thrones, who will also briefly appear in Batman Begins, again with Christian Bale. That night, Eddie sneaks and takes the keys. The others pile in and they drive through the night until they reach the garden in the early morning. They have to keep the garden as far away from the castle as they can, just in case they get attacked by a dragon, because they don't want the dragons knowing where they hide. At the castle, the alarm is set off as one of the tower guards spots something off in the distance. Meanwhile, the girlfriend of one of the men informs Quinn that her boyfriend is in the field with Eddie. Back at the field, and things get dead quiet. Even a bird flying above turns course as something is on its way. A dragon swoops down, burning the crops and eating one of the men. Before the others are made a meal, Quinn and Creedy arrive with trucks covered in sprinkler systems to hopefully dissipate some of the heat from the fire. Even though the dragon could easily kill each and every one of them, it appears to be more interested in burning the field, almost like it knows that's their food source. However, if they no longer have a food source and starve, well then so will the dragons. Quinn starts to have second thoughts. Maybe what they're doing is pointless. Maybe Eddie was right, that there won't be another harvest season. I would love to know how this Time magazine cover was taken. You have a city in complete ruin with dragons flying everywhere, yet somehow someone managed to take this photo, write an article, print the magazine, and distribute it around the country. A man named AJ operating the radio hears someone coming through, which is odd as they haven't picked up another person in years. He contacts the tower guard, who notices military vehicles off in the distance. This throws the entire camp into a frenzy. All the men grab their weapons, however their ammunition stockpile is rather low. American forces led by Denton Van Zandt have arrived in England, and he wants to speak with Quinn. Van Zandt wants shelter while he and his men refit their artillery, but Quinn tells him to go. However, after a little story about how Van Zandt actually killed a dragon, Quinn decides to let him in. Creedy gives Quinn a hard time, well, until Van Zandt's helicopter comes swooping in. Then it's all handshakes and kissing babies. Before everyone can get cozy, a dragon is spotted in the distance, so Van Zandt's men get to work. The Archangels, as they call themselves, is how they plan on taking the dragon out. The idea is that one man acts as bait, and jumps out of the helicopter and gets the dragon's attention. The other two jump out behind and fire nets at the dragon's wings, bringing it to the ground where they can finish the beast off. This plan goes about how you'd expect when the dragon shrugs off the nets, causing one guy to fall straight to the ground, another gets eaten, and only one of the three men actually makes it back safely. With the helicopter pilot Alex still in the air, Quinn distracts the dragon on horseback, luring it straight to Van Zandt. A well-timed harpoon is enough to bring the dragon down, and I wonder, does this solve their food issues for the short term? Can they eat a dragon? Everyone celebrates their little victory until Van Zandt returns and brings everyone back to reality. He lost a few men for one dragon. What is there to celebrate? There's a little power struggle beginning to form between Quinn and Van Zandt. Quinn believes because this is his home, he should be the one giving orders, while Van Zandt just straight up tells him, "I lead, you follow." Van Zandt and Alex explain to Quinn the real reason why they're there. They believe the dragons to all be female, including the one they just killed. All of the dragons except for one. A male that goes around fertilizing the eggs like a fish. This one male is much larger than the rest, and because this is where it all started, they have reason to believe he's here. So if they kill the male, then over time, the entire species should die off. Van Zandt wants to recruit Quinn's men so they can finally end this whole thing, but Quinn thinks he's insane and won't go. The real reason why he doesn't want to go is because he's seen it. The dragon that killed his mother is the one they need to find. Van Zandt disregards what Quinn says and recruits some of his men anyways. Quinn comes over like a freight train and the two men start to fight. Some of the punches thrown during the fight actually landed, and Matthew McConaughey even gave Bale a real headbutt. The two men are finally pulled apart and Van Zandt is heading to London. That night, Quinn walks over to the downed dragon and pulls out an egg, proving that what Van Zandt had said is most likely true. All the dragons but one are female. Van Zandt and his team find themselves just outside of London, but blocked off as the roads are completely inaccessible. Alex sets off in the helicopter to look for another way inside, but something just seems off. The male dragon swoops in, burning everyone with its flame, except for Van Zandt, who manages to get to cover just in time. Alex returns to find the charred remains of her friends and a clearly distressed Van Zandt who just witnessed all of his men and Quinn's men burned to death. They find one other survivor, but there are even more pressing matters at the moment as the male dragon somehow knows about the castle. The dragon causes massive damage with its fiery breath, taking the lives of many inside. The children are all safely placed downstairs with the sprinkler system, but as Creedy goes back up to find more survivors, a second large blast from the dragon completely incinerates him within an instant. The following morning, Quinn and the others are freed from the rubble by Alex, Van Zandt, and a few more survivors, with Van Zandt telling Quinn that he was right. They never should have went. They decide to go back, but this time with Quinn, because he knows if they just stick to the outskirts, they should be able to make their way inside London. How the three of them think they're going to handle a massive dragon when it easily took out an entire team is yet to be seen. The city is in complete ruin and just swarming with dragons. However, because they are beginning to starve without a food source, the male is starting to eat the much smaller females. All the other females have conveniently left the city, so it's just the much larger male that they'll have to contend with. Realizing past mistakes, Van Zandt is now taking orders from Quinn. Traveling underground, Van Zandt shows them 3 magnesium-tipped C4 arrows. The arrow should be able to kill the dragon when he exposes his chest before he breathes fire, but with a range of only 50 feet, it's basically a do-or-die situation. They make it back to the top side, but the dragon already knows they're there. Van Zandt gets to higher ground, and Alex makes a run for it, drawing in the dragon's attention and bringing it to Van Zandt. When Van Zandt fires the arrow, the dragon is way too quick and destroys it before it can do any harm. But with that, you get the moment that every single trailer seemed to emphasize. I mean, if you were going to see this film, it was almost for this one moment alone. Van Zandt leaps at the dragon with an axe in one of the most badass moments in film history. And well, he gets immediately eaten. This is both a huge letdown and hilariously awesome. Everyone going in thought there was going to be some epic fight scene between McConaughey's character and the dragon, but the entire thing was a huge bait and switch. I remember being so let down by this moment when I first saw the movie, but now it's so ridiculous I just can't help but love it. Quinn and Alex are now on their own, and because Quinn lost his arrow earlier when the dragon was chasing them, they need to find it or the human race is over. Quinn manages to find an arrow over by a burnt car, but now he has to somehow get close to the dragon without becoming a meal. Alex gets its attention with a little gunfire, giving Quinn an opportunity to close in. And just as it's about to make its attack, Quinn fires the arrow directly in the dragon's mouth, bringing the beast down in a ball of fire. 3 months have passed since the last sighting of any dragon. Their starvation and lack of any male has caused them to slowly decrease in population. There does appear to be a glimmer of hope on the horizon though, as Quinn's people get radio contact with the French, and the film comes to an end. I don't think Reign of Fire deserved the hate when it came out. Is it a perfect movie? No, but compared to the drivel that comes out today, it looks like an Oscar winner by comparison. The dragons all look really good considering how old the film is and the low budget that they had to work with. There are a few shots here and there where the effects look a little unpolished, but I think for the most part, it looks really good. It's nice to see a film that's actually shot on sets and on location. The landscape of Ireland just fits so perfectly for the story they wanted to tell, and the use of a medieval castle as being the last vestige of hope was such a great idea. I love the mix of the old and the new, and it really comes down to a combination of both to save the day, when a crossbow firing explosive tipped arrow is what finally does the dragon in. The film isn't the huge action-packed movie the trailers would make you believe. It's much more reserved with a few set pieces of action. The bulk of the film is carried by the performances of your lead actors, Christian Bale, Matthew McConaughey, and to a lesser extent, Gerard Butler. All three take the subject matter very seriously, and because they do, the audience does. It would be very easy to go down the typical route and make things very silly and jokey, but they kept everything very straight and very bleak. And one of the best things about this movie, it's only 95 minutes long. No 2.5-hour Marvel slogfests, just a short to-the-point movie about dragons in the post-apocalypse. So what are your thoughts on Reign of Fire? Do you enjoy the movie, or do you think it deserves the criticism it's received? And if dragons aren't your thing, well, how about ghosts? I have a video on the 13 Ghosts remake, and you can find that right here. Thank you for watching, it really means a lot to me. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in the next video.